What do you think happens when we die?
I don't know. We lose control of our body.
Oh.
Maybe we go to like heaven or hell if we are good or bad.
Oh, is that what you think?
Yeah. I think we lose control because our brain stops working, and then the skeleton stops working because our brain doesn't tell our skeleton what to do. So yeah, but like God, I believe in God, so I think like God puts you like in heaven or hell.
Oh, and what do you think heaven is like?
Heaven's the good one, and hell's if you're bad.
But like, what is it really like there? Do you have any ideas?
I don't know, but heaven must be like a good place. So.
What would be good for you? What would you be like? Oh, this is a good place.
Like I think heaven's good because it's where you go if you're good in your life.
Right, but like.
But and hell's you get bad. Bad. It's bad because you do bad stuff in your life.
How could you tell it was bad though? Like if you get there, how would you know if you were in hell?
I don't know. Well, I think I don't know like how you get there.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe there's like two, like you go into like the universe and find these two doors, mm-hmm. and God locks one so you can't go in it. But if you don't go if you don't go in the one he puts you in, then I think you have to stay in outer space until you die. Because you can't breathe.
That's one of the options. Okay.
And because he pops like the bubble that helps you breathe to go.
Wow. That's what you think? Okay. And what do you think, Leo? You think that we lose control of our body?
Yeah, because our brain stops working, and then the skeleton doesn't know what to do.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions for me about that?
Yeah, like what do you think happens when we die?
Well, I think that when we die, our bodies stop working, and then our bodies break down, and all of the energy that was in our bodies goes into the earth, and then becomes new things.
That's what I said.
That was kind of what you said. Yeah, and I don't personally think there is a heaven or a hell, but I know lots of people do.
Because you don't believe in God, right?
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. But it's okay if you do. Everyone gets to decide for themselves.
I believe in God.
Oh, thanks for sharing that with me. Okay, anything else?
It's just that your parents don't believe in God doesn't mean you don't have to believe in God.
You can decide for yourself. That is so true. Yes. Oh, baby Blue Bunny wants to say something.
Blue Bunny wants to say now. We die, we go to Cookie. I think when we die, we turn into a toilet.
A toilet? How did I know that toilets would come up? All right. Well, I love you boys very much.
Stop
Thanks.
talking. Wait, need a wood.
Oh, let's do a whip. All right.
Okay.
Thanks for answering my question. I love you.
I know this is my birthday dinner, but what do you think happens when you die? It's not a trick question. Just wondering what your thoughts are. What do you think?
I think when you get unalived, you get realived as a different person.
Ooh, I like that theory. I subscribe to that theory too.
I was about to say the same thing.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, you guys are on the same page about this. I love this. Wow. How many times do you think that that's happened to you?
200.
200? So are you on like 201 right now?
Yeah, but you forget your memory when you do it.
All of them? All the memories? Is there any way to access any of those previous memories? None?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Good answer. You don't remember how many times you've died and come back again?
Are we going to be on the podcast?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what this is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Anything else you want to say?
Hi.
What about you?
Hi.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you think happens to your body after you die?
Someone else takes your body.
Mm-hmm.
You switch bodies.
How does that happen exactly? Is it like a body snatching situation, or
Yeah.
is the other body alive
Oh,
at the same time, and then you just occupy their body, but they don't know it? But then
That's never happened to me.
I thought it's happened to you so many times.
No, that's what Ezra said.
Oh yeah, that's right. You can't remember how many times it's happened to you. Wait, but this body that you're currently in, what do you think happens to this body when you die?
Someone else takes my body,
Really?
and I take theirs.
Wow. Just like a smooth transition.
Yeah.
Cool.
How would that work if somebody might bury you?
Yeah. Well, that's another idea or theory. Is that what you think happens?
You bury them, since you probably won't ever dig them up, then when you're buried, you switch bodies.
Wow. Wow. What about like, how long does the body stay in the ground before that? And you're just switching bodies. But the body's in the ground. How do you get the body out of the ground?
You dig them up.
You dig them up. Who digs them up?
I don't know. You.
Me? Me specifically?
No.
Okay, that's my job. Any other thoughts? Anything you're curious about death?
No.
No. Great. Love that. Anything you're excited about death? I mean, it's kind of a cool idea that you get to come back as a different person.
Fun will be fun.
Maybe. It might be. It could be like the most fun ride, like most fun roller coaster you've ever been on, but you haven't been on it yet, and you can only go on it once. Who knows? When people die, they can't really like come back and tell you what it was like, so maybe it's the most fun thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it's really not that scary then, huh?
Well, if they remember when they come back to life,
Mm-hmm.
they can tell you.
Yeah. You know, there are stories of like little kids who say really interesting things to their parents and other adults about like things they remember about like the last time they were an adult or the last time they were in a body. So sometimes people remember. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, your theory that people don't remember at all is equally valid.
I hope I remember being Harper.
Yeah. I hope I remember being Jamie.
I hope I remember being Ezra.
Me too. What does Pop think?
I like your reincarnated zombie body switching. That's great.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Are we famous now?
You're about to be. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Ready?
Actually?
Well, we'll see, I guess.
What do you want to say to your adoring fans?
Yeah, anything you want to say?
Hi again.
Anything you want your fans to know about you?
Wait. Bye
Anything
again.
Anything you want your fans to know about death?
It's fun.
He remembers. What about you? Anything?
No.
No? That's about it?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions you have for me or Papa about death? You guys seem pretty clear. Great. Okay, you ready?
Cool.
Hey, Jamie. Oh my goodness. I feel so full of emotion after listening to you and your family. And I think I would have certainly felt emotions anyway. I also want to name my uterus woke me up early this morning with some pangs and the start of my period. And so I also know that this is a time where I am more intimate with emotions and intensity anyway, so that I'm listening to you. And happy birthday, by the way. I don't know if it was your birthday yesterday or when your birthday is, but happy birthday. And you're at your birthday dinner talking about death with your cuties. And I just loved their answers and how they built on each other. And I just think that's so sweet. And I also love how it could seem on the surface unrelated, but like the notion of like, are we famous now? First of all, I just love how I'm really relating a lot, especially maybe because you have two boys too, and then they're this like little step older than mine, and I'm like kind of comparing developmentally like what they think of and how just the notion of being known by other people as you get older, that concept gets more real and has weight versus when you're little, you're like, the whole world already thinks about me, don't they? Like it's just a different thing. And how that and like concepts of things like fame and legacy, how those are tied to the ideas of death that we were talking about in some ways too. Hey, like ways to live on, if you will, past like the actual time you spend here on Earth. And just like like they call their dad Papa, and my kiddos called my like my husband Papa, and like I just literally was like, it feels like I'm listening to my family in the future. Like obviously you're all individual people, and like that exact conversation a few years from now will probably look different in my household, but just like their voices being a little bit deeper and a little bit more clear spoken and all of those things. I had that, those moments where you have that like timeline stretch and you just feel like you're having like a montage moment of your life. And I was picturing future montage moments with my boys with rougher, deeper voices. And that's a lot of sensation for me. That's like, oh my gosh, curious time, cutting me open and feeling just fine. Taylor Swift lyric. Yeah, it's just so beautiful. And something I think is really kind of healing to hear, both with your kiddos and with mine, is how they're holding their ideas, you want to say lightly? Like I don't hear in any of the kiddos any of that like anxiety that I remember feeling from a very young age. Like I think I've said it here on the podcast, like my first memory, and I do think it's a real memory because no one else would have told it to me. Like it was a personal moment I had. And I was like 3 because we lived in Montreal at the time. I think I was 3, and I just have this memory of being in our like Montreal apartment and like feeling the terror of maybe not going to heaven and sort of desperately asking Jesus into my heart and feeling like ready to do that. And then this deep sense of relief that then I was going to be okay. And, that was pretty young to be feeling such things. And of course, at that age, I would have been feeling all sorts of emotions anyway. And I feel such gratitude that at least externally and what they were sharing with me, like they they don't appear to have that anxiety. Even, Felix sharing, I think we go to heaven and hell, and if you're good, you go to heaven. My heart did a little jump and had a little pang in my chest of uh-oh. And I always feel that a little bit when he says that he believes in God. And then I just hold on to that part of myself and know that that's mine and about my history and my story with what those words mean and those ideas mean, just like we were talking about the death of the idea of God versus God himself, him, her, their self, right? And so then, you hear me say, what do you mean by that? Or what do you think about that? And just the notion that he's heard enough and he thinks it's an interesting enough story or something that he's this is what I think. But he's not he wasn't even interested in imagining what the places were, or he wasn't am I going here or there? It's an idea. It's a story that his mind is playing around with that maybe brings him a certain amount of interest or understanding or whatever. I don't know. He's repeating all sorts of stories. He's absorbing the world, and then it's sort of later that you kind of actually sort out what is yours anyway, and then you continue that process forever, And so, though it felt a little I had the anxiety in me, I had also such sort of relief and gratitude about the lack of anxiety I heard in any of the kiddos' answers, really, that we heard in these recordings. And it would be okay if they had it too. Existential concern is a part of life too. I don't mind that my kids aren't experiencing it yet, So thank you so much for sharing that. It just feels so fitting at the end of this season about death to hear from the folks in our lives that are closest to the beginning part of their life, and getting their perspectives on it all that are, relatively untarnished and baggaged by life yet, right? And happy birthday. And I'll talk to you later. Hey, Jamie. Just gonna walk over and pick up my kids. And I thought I'd send you a little reflection about all the ways that death showed up in the workshop and then keynote address that I had the privilege of giving at this conference for medical educators on the weekend. Because I think, this probably will be the last voice memo, for me at least, in this season that we've had about death. And, having spent the last few months reflecting on death with you and with my body and with, the podcast community, I was just struck by how often death was a part of the conversation, talking to these amazing physicians who teach, future physicians. Part of it, I will be honest, was me bringing it up because I love bringing up our mortality. In the workshop I gave, it's all about creating space for yourself in your life and for your humanity. And I have a whole slide that's just a quote from the Oliver Burkeman book, 4,000 Weeks. I forget if have we talked about that book directly? It's a great book. It's called Time Management for Mortals. And he's very dry and witty and philosophical about time management, but from the perspective of the fact that if you live to be in your 80s, your life will have been 4,000 weeks long. And there's something about putting it in those terms that makes it feel a little more realistically short, though still long. But it helps to keep in mind we don't have forever to do the things we might want to do. And so how do we really decide on purpose and prioritize what matters most? And so I put that one near the beginning of the workshop because, these are all busy physicians, because the number one adjective you can call a physician is busy. And it's how to capture their attention to consider choosing differently with their lives. And then at the end of the presentation, I decided to read The Summer's Day, The Summer Day? No, The Summer's Day by Mary Oliver, you know, the one that ends with, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? And there's something about slowly reading a poem about a person who spent an entire day walking around a field, feeding a grasshopper, being idle and blessed. Like the room went, after I finished reading it, and that felt delicious. And it wasn't that people didn't have real questions like, how do you really do it? And how do you prioritize? But like, it just felt so rich to spend that time together and consider our mortality. And through that lens, actually have that be the way in which we choose to live our lives on purpose, you know? And then in the bigger keynote, I'm in this giant conference room giving a talk about being human in healthcare and recognizing that you're a human being in a human body and sharing what I had to share there. And that's when, you know, at the end there was like a Q&A, and one person just asked this question. She was describing, these are rural physicians as well. So working in more remote places where there's not as easy access to, you know, large hospitals. And very commonly there's really a very obvious, there's always a finite number of physicians for a certain population. Like that's how it works. But like, it's just very obvious when it's like, there's 5 people that run the emergency room. And that was the example, was like, I think she said 4 or 5 people that are trying to keep their emergency room open for their town, for their community. And if one of them or all of them decide to like, that they need to work less to honor their bodies and to be more human, then the emergency room closes and people will die. And I just like had to say the truthful thing, which was like, yes, that is what will happen. And I just want to name, like, whether those healthcare humans choose to work themselves until they drop, and then there's no one to pick up the slack, and then a patient dies in the absence of a physician being available, or if they choose to ahead of time, like, either way, that's actually not the individual responsibility of those physicians. That's sort of the warped, inhuman nature of not only our system, but how we think of our systems, that it would feel like it's on the shoulders of these 4 or 5 individual humans to hold open a space for the rest of them to get care. Like, something has to change. That's already completely unsustainable, right? But then just naming, like, yes, patients may die that otherwise would not have died if the system was properly resourced, right? And I mean, I didn't get into the whole thing, but even thinking afterwards, and if we like collectively thought of, instead of outsourcing all sorts of body care to only a tiny number of individuals, if we collectively thought of how we each could contribute to the project of body care, instead of the weight of all of that being only on these 4 or 5 individual shoulders, you know? And I also definitely brought up hospicing maternity in the talk, and just like, our system's dying, we need a new one. The new one's coming, don't worry. Let's give this one palliative care. So just kept bringing up death throughout. It's a fascinating experience to feel myself, and it was so interesting to see what people came up after and what they wanted to share. I do think that a core component, and something that is, I would say, a very effective thing to hold the attention of a busy physician who has a million things on their mind, is to just repeatedly bring up the death that's in the room, their own deaths, the deaths of their patients. Like, even the stakes of this, that doesn't mean it, the stakes of patients dying doesn't mean we ignore our bodies. The stakes of patient dying mean it's time to tune into our bodies, you know? So, yeah, I feel so much gratitude for how, I mean, just our general friendship, as well as these past few months, prepared me to tell the truth as clearly as I felt like I could in those moments, including in the hard questions, and not try and shirk and, you know, just try to say it as truthfully as I could in those moments. So thank you for helping me prepare for those talks. And yeah, always grateful for you, Jamie.
Hello, my dear. It has been quite a bit of time since I have sent a voice memo. And in fact, I suppose this final voice memo is the first one where I'm actually just talking by myself because, yeah, it's been a very full couple of weeks since that little early birthday party that I had with Tyler and the boys, which was quite a few days before my birthday, and now we are a week out from my birthday. So that's how full it's been. But it's been really gloriously full, and for me, what full means doesn't mean busy. Full means there are so many things, just the right amount of things unfolding that I want to be and hold the intention to be completely present for. And so I'm not on my phone much at all. Obviously, that's pretty standard for me. Nor am I really thinking much about this project in those moments because I really enjoy. I've learned after almost 10 years of working for myself now, I've learned to really kind of put projects and responsibilities and endeavors into capsules, sort of mental capsules. So then I'm not feeling like I am or even should be working all the time. And with this project in particular, I've really learned to just, surprise, surprise, trust my body on the timing. And maybe this timing should not be all that shocking, considering that what I'm doing right now is I am on a walk. I am walking a dog, though the dog I'm walking is not my dog because I am not in Bellingham. I am in Nashville. I've been here in Nashville for, about a week now. My final weekend of yoga teacher training happened this past weekend. And now my final hands-on bodywork residency for the next couple of months until August, until I come and convene with you in August, is taking place right now. And currently walking my dear partner in loving relatings dog, Keith's dog, Tempo, around the neighborhood. It is an absolutely gorgeous day. We've had a lot of storms here. I feel very grateful to not live in this climate anymore because living with that kind of low hum of anxiety for many months out of the year doesn't work for me anymore. But like there could be a tornado. But I like being here to experience that occasionally because there is really none of that going on up in the Pacific Northwest, for better or for worse. But one of the really wonderful things about the severe weather patterns in this region of the country and of the world is that generally after one or a couple of those move through, everything is so bright and so clear and so calm and peaceful. It's a little bit kind of like manic depressive-ish, I would say, in its tendencies, the weather down here. But every now and then it reaches kind of this like regulated, as we say in yogic philosophy, sattvic state. And today is feeling really gorgeously sattvic. And I'm really loving that energy and loving walking this sweet dog around what is actually kind of my old neighborhood, which is really sweet. And I can feel myself coming out of my own personal bardo. And I'll say more about that in a second, because that's really what my main reflection that I have for this voice memo. But first I wanted to respond to a couple things in your most recent voice memo, which is number one, I had never heard of that book before. And it's very cute. And I will say that 4,000 weeks is quite the undershot for me in my ideating of how long I intend to live. In fact, I often say I intend to live to 105. So I just did the quick math before recording this voice memo. And that is almost 5,500 weeks. So your point, the principle of it's not forever still remains. And I really love being here. And second thing, the conversations, the Q&A conversations, Joan just masterfully, beautifully, brilliantly responded to with full presence and authenticity and honesty and compassion. There was just something so profound and weighty about that moment and the way that you were telling the story of it. And I found myself, as I was listening to you share it, like embodying that same kind of posture of like, yeah, things will happen. We'll say, what I was holding in my body is like, yes, different circumstances will unfold. If you change the way you show up to your environment, the results you will get in that environment are going to be different. That's just the math of all kind of action in the world. And I found myself just holding this awareness within me of any time we consider shifting our behavior and we say we know what will happen on the other side of that shift, we are in a posture of sort of like a codependent posture with life, where we are trying to anticipate the response of life in our direction in the same way that when we're in a codependent posture in a relationship, we are augmenting our behaviors precisely because we are over anticipating what the response to our behaviors will be. When the reality is that we actually cannot know. We can't know. So there's this both and, right, of what that physician was communicating to you of like, here are my assumptions based in the data that we have, or even just largely like a lot of my own stories about what I believe will happen. And simultaneously, I think a worthwhile admission for our own well-being is to say that always, 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 there are no exceptions to this. And I understand why, like, in that context, it's hard to believe that there are no exceptions to this. There are truly no exceptions to this. We cannot ever know what is going to happen, ever. We can't. And also, wrapped up in it, the beauty of your response is just like you going, yes, people will die. But like at the end of the day, doesn't that speak so much to what we talked about in our death and healthcare episode, where it often feels like what is unfolding inside of, these spaces of modern medicine is like trying to like resist the inevitable, trying to make it so that like no one ever dies ever. And yeah, I think that's one of the ways in which I found your response to be so gorgeous. Is you just saying like, yes, people are going to die, but guess what? Actually, like no matter what you do, people are going to die, and you are a people and you are going to die. And so what if we started there with, the quality of your life, and then remembered that there's this dance of both and of there are responsibilities that I have assumed in this lifetime based upon my values and my passions. And to live in a codependent posture with life is to tell yourself that the primary way in which you should be moving through the world, the primary motivation you should have, is anticipating the result, response, or reception of your actions in the world, as opposed to prioritizing the feeling state of the motivation underneath those actions. The feeling state of not like, does this make me feel good? Because sometimes that can be a little hard for people to really hear often what I'm saying when I'm encouraging people to only do what makes you feel good. So let's just use the language, do what makes you well. And I loved the way that you articulated and kind of delineated this like, hey, if these results that you would really prefer to not happen, it is the fault of the structure of the system. It is not your fault solely as a singular entity person who should have somehow suited up in your superhero, costume and figured out how to fix the whole world on your own. Thank you for sharing that story with me. I found it to be so beautiful, so poignant. I think the final thing I want to share, this final voice memo of our second season, our death season, is an experience I had during my graduation ceremony for my yoga teacher training just a few days ago. It was so gorgeous in so many ways, and it was the perfect way to finish out this, really transformational 8-9 month journey that I've been on. Yes, inside of this teacher training, but just like in general in the life that has been happening outside of and running alongside this teacher training. It was just such a gorgeous, sweet, simple ceremony to mark us coming out of this container. And one of the elements of it that my teacher created for it is this ceremonial ritual activity of giving us 2 pieces of paper and having 2 candles lit in the middle of the circle. And on one piece of paper, we were to write essentially what we're leaving behind. And on the second piece of paper, to write where we're going or what we're calling in. And the way it was kind of phrased was, I could hear kind of in the implication, like, what are the things, like the habits or actions or behaviors that you're done with, that you're, kind of saying like, bye bitch too. But for me, I don't really have those to let go of as much as I have like archetypal phases that as I recognize where I am in both linear and energetic time, these phases are over, and they're over for good, and I'm not going back. And I don't know if I really want to say what all of them are out loud, but I will say one of them that I wrote down. I wrote down 3 on my paper, and one of them was maiden, probably obviously. And then on the paper of what we are calling in, or how I experienced that was what I'm moving towards fearlessly and in a state of full surrender, is mother. And then the activity, once we had those written down, was to come up and kind of hold some sacred space within ourselves while the people in the circle around you kind of hold that space in observation and witness. And say a few words regarding the release, and then set that first paper on fire in the candle, and then put it in the water. And then to move to the second candle and say a few words of, preparedness, readiness, expressing your state of reception and gratitude. And then light that second paper on fire and put it in the water. And the expressions that naturally flowed out of me regarding what I'm leaving behind was just, I got up to the candle, I knelt in front of it, and I just was overwhelmed with emotion and just was crying so hard that I could barely get the whispers out of me, just saying thank you over and over and over and over for these 3, identities that I have embodied that I know I am leaving behind. And because I'm not going backwards, nobody can. That's not how this works. I had this awareness of like, I'm saying goodbye forever to these gorgeous life phases that taught me so much. And I just said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And set the paper on fire, watched it burn, and then put it in the water. And the moment I stood up, I had this full-bodied awareness of like, this is the bardo right now. This is gestation. This is that in between. This is the, space of imaginative emergence, these steps that I take from this candle to the other candle, and the time that I take before I open my mouth and say what I'm going to say to call this in. Like, I'm in that space of what has been is no longer, but what is coming is not here yet. And then as I realized that, I was just like, I want to stay here. I want to milk this. I want to feel the bardo. I want to feel this in between. And the awareness that there were 5 other people to go after me, and, the kind of back of mind, like everyone's watching me, like none of that mattered at all. It was just like, I am in charge of essentially this like temporary intimate space that I am occupying with this energy of the in-between. And I want to stay in it for as long as feels good to me and get acquainted with it and find out what it has to teach me. And in that space, this like additional awareness emerged that this whole training, this whole last, ironically, I suppose, 9 months has been that gestation period. I wasn't just in the bardo in the time it took me to walk from one candle to the other. I have been in the bardo this whole time, this like going back and forth between Nashville and Bellingham. And, you know, even what last month helped me identify, which is that I don't want to do this back and forth as much because my life in Bellingham and my life moving in the direction of this archetype of, you know, mother, literally and figuratively, is feeling so correct and true that the thing that was so supportive and gorgeous about like still anchoring into maiden while I visited mother, and then in the back and forth, it was like the percentages shifted, and then it was feeling like instead of, you know, going back to the place that I lived because it was most familiar while I was getting settled in my new home, over time, eventually, of course, it felt like I keep leaving my home to go back and visit this place and this role and this identity. And the process of this training and the experience I had and the tools I've learned, and gosh, this bardo has been profound. Then this like question of like, well, there's no going back now. I already burned the paper, so I guess I got to go forward and step fully into these roles, these archetypes, these new identities that are going to necessitate me being fully surrendered and fully confident of my power at the same time. And I felt, as I just sat with that, I just felt this readiness emerge from my body. And I felt my face like shift from like a face that was registering and feeling and expressing emotion to like, I felt everything kind of shift and set. Like I could feel my jaw, and my eyes were closed, but I could kind of feel my gaze behind my eyes just like set. And it wasn't like I chose that. It's so hard to describe, but it was like my body was like, I'm ready. And like she somatically expressed that readiness. And a second after I felt my face set that way, I opened my eyes and I just said, I'm ready. And I set that new paper on fire and I watched it burn up all those words, and then I set it in the water, and the ceremony continued with the other women doing that, and then some other sweet little rituals. But that for me, I will never forget. I will never forget that moment, and how sweet and profound it felt at the same time. And just this zoomed out perspective of, yeah, it's not just the walk from one candle to the other. It has been these entire last 9 months. And I have changed in a way that there is no going back now, which is excellent news, because I lived and milked and felt and appreciated every moment of what I cannot go back to. And it reminds me of what we talked about in our last full episode of, you know, isn't the fact that all of this is going away, isn't that such an exceptional case for truth? And I have no regrets about the ways in which I decided to and then committed to embodying full presence, and the ways in which I was truly all here for those previous phases. And I am so excited to continue to bring that full presence into these next phases of this journey that I am in with my body for my 5,400 and something weeks. Oh, wow. We did it, Joan. We did it. Season 2 is finished. I am so proud of us. I am so enormously grateful for you. And I am so excited to find out what's next. And I can't wait to meet you in your body, and be bodies together in person in just a few months. And I love you so much. And I guess that's a wrap, my dear.
This is Experiential Anatomy. Thanks for listening. I'm Joan Chan.
And I'm Jamie Lee Finch. Experiential Anatomy is co-hosted and created by us.
Amber Wyndham is the editor. Julia Wyndham is the supervising producer.
Senior producer is Elizabeth Wyndham. Aaron Beatty leads our community management.
Our theme music is Park Pier 3 by G's Guy.
If you have any thoughts, questions, or stories to share about this week's episode, email us at exanatomy@gmail.com.
Please follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. And remember to join us over at exanatomy.substack.com.
Experiential Anatomy is produced by Windhaven Productions.